friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Beanie Yo 722. In that neighborhood, my brothers and sisters. We're back on another Wednesday, my friends. So y'all know who we're about to go back to. Mike from that chapter. It is always a delight when we get to go back to Mike. And the title of the video is Detectives Realize Murdered Mom Was Actually a Child Predator. Now I'm wondering, whoever murdered this mom, did they know that she was a child predator, so they just decided to take matters into their own hands? I'm just saying, Bean Team, that is a possibility. But we're about to see. But before we see, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you may need. Get what you need, please. Another That Chapter Wednesday. Y'all got what y'all need. Y'all ready to go? Then let's go.
It was a hot summer's evening in South Carolina. A master pianist was playing beautifully. After his performance, a man and his daughter went to him, complimented, and a friendship began. Later, they would talk of his custody issues, of how his ex was trying to take his daughter away. But what was scariest of all was why. All of this ending in a horrifying murder. Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike. And in this old video, we have a story of lies, of betrayal, of tricking a man to commit an act that is so horrifying they thought it was ritualistic, but then maybe nobody was tricked, and maybe no one in this story is what they appear to be. On the surface, right, a man just wants his ex gone. But then you learn why, and it turns this entire story upside down. It's absolutely bananas and quite disturbing, so look forward to that. But before we get into all of that, please subscribe to see new stories for the dark every single Tuesday. Now, you and I, let's give it a go.
Let's give it a go. And get whatever you may need.
The city of Greer lies in North South Carolina, and it's home to about 40,000 people. Pretty well rated by folk who live there. It's a pretty quiet place, not much happening, but that can be in a good way. Nice little place to raise a family, and it's slowly but surely growing as people escape the cities. In fact, that seems to be the biggest complaint. That it's so nice, more people are moving there, and traffic, it's a pain in the hole. Remember, you gotta be nice, but not too nice. You don't want people moving in with you. Definitely not the people in this story. Speaking of nice, this story is anything but, because it was mid-October 2021. The leaves were a crisp shade of orange, slowly turning into that vibrant red, a final burst of colour before fading away. The air starts to cool, and pumpkins show up in ones and twos around the neighbourhood, along with all sorts of spooky decor, freshly dusted and out for the upcoming Halloween. A holiday that began as a way to celebrate the time of the year when a barrier between our world and another was at its thinnest.
I think that's like one of, if not the most favorite time of the year for me, Bean Team. Right when it turned from summer to fall, like that little middle area right there when you see the leaves changing colors and stuff. Like, I just like the atmosphere at that time of the year. But I digress. Let's keep going.
And it was very thin, at 122 Canebrake Drive, which is in southwest Greer. A quiet neighborhood that in just a couple of weeks would be chock full of kids dressed as witches and vampires. On the morning of October 13th, 2021, it was already scary enough. Shortly after 11 a.m. that day, a call came into dispatchers. A man had been unable to get a hold of his fiancée. He'd been trying to call her like a number of times, calling her again and again, and he got so concerned that she wasn't picking up the phone that he actually went home to go and double check on her, because this particular morning, she had a job interview. So they had been talking about it a lot, and he was, maybe she's really nervous, anxious, whatever, maybe I'll just pop home. How's it going? Are you all ready? You excited? He pulled the car into the driveway and walked around the rear of the house. The back door of this house at 122 Canebrake Drive, it was never locked, so he let himself in that way. Walking into the house, though, it was like, once again, eerily quiet. But it had that sort of energy, as in, like, people were just here, but now, nothing. No TV, no radio, complete silence. But there was this weird smell in the air, kind of a chemically smell in the home. He continued through the house, walking from the rear towards the front of the house, down this dark hallway. And as he reached the end of the hallway, where it just turns into the living room, he looked down and he seen something on the floor. Something he was not expecting to see. It was a rose petal.
I just gotta point out real quick, it's crazy to me that they just keeping the back door, one of the doors was unlocked. Like, why are we even doing that? Lock your doors, Bean Team. Make sure your doors are locked at all times.
Not one, but many. He then followed them into the room itself and was met by a horrifying and gruesome scene. He saw his fiancée on the floor, and she was lifeless, covered in blood from head to toe. It couldn't possibly be hers, but it was. The most disturbing Halloween prop you'd ever see, but it was real. He called her name, but she didn't move, and she never would again. An image like this would take time for your brain to recognize you're not dreaming, but what made it seem so was that the rose petals continued. All around her body lay rose petals. It was like a ritual. Bradley Post called the police and he informed them that he had just found his fiancée, Christina Parcell, dead in this house. It looked like she had been murdered.
And I feel like those rose petals was left on the floor intentionally. You know what I'm saying? Whoever did this, they did this rose petal everywhere thingy for some reason.
County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
122 Canebrake Drive.
NJ Police, Fire, EMS.
I'm sorry? I think I might have a death.
Okay, let me connect you.
Walked in my fiance's house. She wouldn't answer my call. There's a very weird smell. I can't get her to come around.
Okay, let me.
It's all over the floor.
Let me. All right, do you think that she's not viable? Tell me why you think she's dead.
So you want to call the
Either open. Okay. All right.
There's a lot of blood.
And a lot of blood. Okay.
Christina Parcell was 41 years of age and had worked as a veterinary technician in nearby Greenville. After her passing, people came out of the woodwork like non-stop just to say, what a lovely person she was. She was always one of those people who'd want to make you happy, want to make you laugh, try and put a smile on your face. And as much as the people loved her, the dogs at the vet, they loved her even more. And she did to them. One person writing after her murder, Christina was not only one of the most epic vet techs to our dogs, but she was a friend, with a personality the size of a high-rise and always trying to make everyone else feel better. I can't tell you how many times she walked me to my car after an appointment and had me crying from laughing so hard.
The search for answers continues here on Canebrake Drive, where a 41-year-old woman was found dead inside this home, and now deputies are calling it a homicide. A Greenville County neighborhood on high alert tonight.
It's terrible to think that somebody lost their life in this manner. It's just awful.
The person who did it hasn't been found yet, but investigators tell 7 News they strongly believe this is an isolated incident.
Staff grieve the loss of their co-worker Christina Parcell, who who was found dead in a Greer home on Wednesday morning.
Immediately, we just all sort of felt, I guess we kind of walked around like zombies that first day. It felt like a bad dream.
The 41-year-old was a veterinarian technician at the hospital for over 3 years.
The real light, though, of Christina's life was her daughter. Absolutely. A minor, though only ever named as A, so I'll keep it that way, but A was Christina's be-all and end-all, which made what Christina was going through in the months, frankly, and years leading up to her own death extremely troubling. She had been in the midst of a bitter, with a capital B, custody dispute with A's father, a fella named John Joey Mello.
Uh-oh.
When the investigation into this brutal murder began, you can imagine police wanted to speak with the person she was fighting with at the time, right? Her ex, 63-year-old John Mello. John was Italian-American, and at the time of the murder, he was back in his second home country, so he was informed and would return to the US as soon as he possibly could. He was, determined, though, to be, for sure, in Italy at the time of Christina's murder, so it wasn't him who killed her, obviously. And also, of course, they would want to have a good, long talk with 68-year-old Bradley Post, Christina's fiancé and the man who found the body. Christina and Bradley had been dating for about 5 years by this stage, and he had proposed about 6 months earlier. So authorities, they began securing the scene, they began collecting any evidence that's left behind, they go around checking neighbors, asking, see anything weird this morning? They go around collecting, anybody got a Ring camera? Anything like that, doorbells, whatever it is, It all begins and spreads out from there. In the house, which was actually Christina's sister's house, her sister was named Lutina, but Christina and her daughter A were living with the sister at this time. Inside that house, they would find multiple laptops, they would find some drugs, they would find countless paper documents, all about the custody disputes between Christina and John Mello that had been going on for years and years and years across 2 countries between the United States and Italy. It was crazy. It would have been so vicious that at one point John had taken their daughter A to Italy with him, not telling the authorities, not telling Christina, and so the battle just got worse and worse and worse. Christina had to go through the Italian courts to bring her daughter back. So you can imagine a battle getting worse and worse and worse like this. Did it get to this point? Blood appeared to be all over the crime scene in multiple places, and it seemed like Christina had been posed in the position she was found in. She had blunt force trauma and had been stabbed approximately 31 times. The scene was deeply traumatic, and it appeared Christina had fought for her life. DNA was found under her fingernails, hopefully giving the police an identity. A neighbor's CCTV was also discovered, showing a man in a black hoodie in the area in the hours before. He had a backpack on, and it looked like he entered the house at 122 Canebrake Drive at around 10 a.m., 9:30, 10 a.m., an hour before Bradley came home to discover the scene. This mysterious man then left on a bicycle. If they can match the DNA found under Christina's fingernails, this might be the very lad they were looking for. And an arrest would follow soon. But not of that fella. And things would only get darker as the investigation progressed. Yeah, hold on to your butts, folks. This will get, yeah.
I don't know where we going with this one, y'all. Seriously, man, I still got a lot of questions that I need answered, Mike.
Christina Parcell met John Mello back in 2008. And, they kicked it off from the start. Seemed to be going great, lads. Although it was one of those kind of relationships where they'd be fighting a lot. They'd break up, get back together, break up, get back together. Always drama type relationships. And I suppose, the fact that John Mello was a good 20 years older than Christina and he had a lot of baggage himself probably didn't help. John Mello had arrived in South Carolina only a couple of years before they started dating, and he was a music producer. He was a musician. So, probably not going to end well. John Mello had worked with the Rolling Stones, Elton John, Neil Young, a lot of very famous musicians over the years. He was originally from Massachusetts, but had been all over the place over the years. He had been married before, twice, neither ending amicably, and had owned a bar called the Doll Hut in Los Angeles. He landed in Greenville, South Carolina, in 2004. Over the years, John Mello was not mellow at all, and he'd actually been involved with the law numerous times, but never kind of criminally involved with the law. Like, harassment reports kind of followed him everywhere. Maybe some domestics kind of followed him everywhere. Most recently, for example, in 2014, a fellow who owned a recording studio in South Carolina was looking to hire a music producer. John Mello, all of his expertise and knowledge over the years, he applied. He didn't get the job. Then, somehow, all these social media messages, emails, this entire harassment campaign begins against this recording studio across the internet. I'm talking like dozens of messages, calls, threats, blackmail, even. All of that would be linked back to John Mello, who I guess he maybe was disappointed he didn't get the job, but who knows? Drama would follow John everywhere, or at least that's, what he would say, not realizing that, hey, maybe it's me. Regardless, he would date Christina Parcell for a good few years, and even in 2016 he would file a domestic violence report against her. Definitely not a good idea that they remain together. And they didn't, except they would still have to, kind of unfortunately for our story, still have to be a big part of each other's lives when, in 2012, they welcomed a daughter together into the world. John would file and later be granted sole custody of A. Christina would file for visitation rights. She would get it. John would file to revoke the visitation rights she would given, alleging that Christina and her new boyfriend, A. Bradley Post, were inappropriate.
That's a hell of an allegation to put on your baby mama, man, your ex. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if it's true or not, y'all, right now, but I'm leaning toward that he lying. Like, he just making that ish up to just give him a reason to kill her. You know what I'm saying, man? Like, you can just tell the animosity they got towards each other. Whenever you get to the point where you don't want your child to see their parent no more, their mama no more, or their daddy no more, it's like we getting petty, I feel like now. Unless he telling the truth about Christina is saying or touching the little girl A inappropriately. Let's see. But I think he lying.
In this whole video, we have the story of a man trying to hide his loved one. Not only did he not want her taken from him, he was also scared that what might happen to her if she was. It's a story of lies and secrets of the most horrifying kind, but what else do we talk about on that chapter? And so if you didn't want anybody to find you, wanted to remain hidden virtually.
Mike at his commercial, y'all. But yeah, man, I'm leaning towards that dude full of sugar honey iced tea. Seriously. And it's like, even, I don't know, man. It's like, you gonna kill your child freaking mama? That is just effed up anyway. I don't know, y'all. Let's just get some more details, like I said. What is this? Let's take it back. I think I done went too far. Let's go.
VPN for sponsoring and supporting that chapter. Now, let's get back to it.
Back to it.
In 2020, playing in Greenville was a popular pianist, and he was extremely talented, named Zach Hughes. He was 29, originally from Morro Bay, California. But at a young age, himself, his younger brother, and his parents relocated to Virginia. They also adopted 5 kids from Russia, which is a lot of kids, especially as these kids came from very traumatic backgrounds. Zach had had a good home life up to this point. And though adopting kids who come from the worst circumstances is noble, it didn't make Zach's upbringing any easier. The kids they adopted from Russia, some of them were fine, but the oldest was a young girl named Grace who was psychotic. She even wrote how she wanted to kill Zach's parents, and investigations were done, Zach's family were cleared, But Zach, yeah, it didn't make life easy for anybody. And so, to kind of escape, he had this beautiful, happy family that he grew up in, a very idyllic childhood, and then it kind of gets destroyed. So Zach, to escape all of this, he threw himself into... That ain't clackety clackety. To escape, he dove, splash, headfirst, bang, into Tickling the Ivories, and he was hella good at it. He was like a prodigy. He went on to win awards and was accepted into Juilliard, one of the most prestigious art schools in the world. After he graduated, he did attempt to join the Marines, officer candidate school in fact. However, it was while in training he suffered stress fractures to both legs, so there goes that dream. Now he just had to settle for being this amazing musician.
This Beethoven idea that I had a year and a half prior ended up coming together here in Greenville.
600 pages, 11 hours of music, all coming together for over a dozen free community concerts next year.
Rather than say, I'm only going to play this music if you pay me for it, that wasn't the spirit that this project was conceived in. It's something that I want to do regardless of whether I can make money at it. I would say it's the biggest goal of my life so far.
And so he settled down in South Carolina, playing away. His dream was to perform all 31 of Beethoven's sonatas. Beethoven was like his musical idol. And one evening while he was playing in downtown Greenville, John Mello and his daughter A, they just happened to walk in. John Mello, music producer of course, here's him. Mighty fine. Hearing Zach Hughes play, they just thought he was the bee's knees, the dog's bollocks.
I just gotta say, man, pianists are like some of the most cool people ever, y'all. Just because it looks so freaking hard to do that ish. You know what I'm saying? That take a lot of freaking talent, a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of effort, a lot of all that, man. Salute to all the people out there who know how to play the freaking piano.
They went up to him saying, hey, you're pretty good at tickling the ivories. They even requested a song, one of A's favorites. Debussy's Clair de Lune. He played away, and a close friendship between John Mello and Zach Hughes would blossom. When the investigation into Christina Parcells' murder began, the police, they really wanted to get a close look at the relationship between John Mello and Zach Hughes. After all, so John Mello was in Italy, at the time of his bitter, ex's murder. But, what are his friends like? Who else could have done this? Now, John Mello did return to the United States on October 21st, 2021. That's 1 week after the murder. And when he did, as soon as he got off the plane, he was immediately arrested. Now, John wasn't arrested, though, for the murder, anything connection with the murder at all. He was actually arrested because for custody issues. He wasn't playing ball with the courts, and he had done something he shouldn't have, which was run away to Italy with his daughter. So he was arrested for that.
Authorities arrested John Mello for interfering with a custody order back in October of 2021.
Now, Mello shared a child with Christina Parcells, who you see on the screen. She was found stabbed dozens of times at a home on Canebrake Drive in Greer in October of 2021. Mello was charged with taking their child out of the country.
And I was going to say that a lot earlier too, y'all, when Mike first told us that John was in Italy. In my brain, I'm like, shit, that still don't mean that he ain't had nothing to do with the murder. That don't mean that he ain't hired somebody else to do it. You know what I'm saying, man? I think he is involved, y'all.
Police began to speak with people who knew John Mello. And they told the police, yeah, John's got a good friend in Zach. In fact, when John was arrested, he listed Zach as his contact, saying he was the only one to collect his luggage and stuff from the airport. The police then began to learn about some of the things they had done together since meeting way back when. That they were, best friends 5 ever. Good buddies. So good, in fact, that John Mello began to tell Zach, his best friend, a lot of things about Christina, and a lot of things about his fears of what she was doing. And so began a campaign of, shiteness against her. John and Zach began their friendship after a performance one night in downtown Greenville. After John confided in Zach a lot of what was going on during the custody issues, his own troubles, and that he was worried for A. He never said outright, but he always hinted that something was seriously wrong between A, her mom Christina, and Bradley. He didn't have proof, but was worried for his daughter. John would then hire Zach Hughes to do some household stuff for him, a little extra money. And so then in 2020, Zach, he was only delighted to hear that John Mello had left the United States and had taken A with him. You know, you're worried about your ex and her fiancé, just get out of the country, get away from him. Of course, John Mello did this. In 2020, he left the United States, went to Italy with A, didn't tell the courts, didn't tell the authorities, didn't tell Christina. So what he did was, you know, kind of against the rulings. As Christina, she had visitation. So you can't take her across to Europe, halfway across the world, without the mom who has visitation having a say-so, and so began more custody shite. And this was going now in the Italian courts, all the way up to there. Christina would be going over and back to Italy, from Greenville to Italy, you know, to see her daughter, and eventually the Italian courts would side with the mother, saying that, yeah, Christina, that A has to go back to the United States until all of these custody issues in the United States are resolved. And so that's when John and good buddy Zach Hughes began this campaign of harassments against Christina Parcell, trying to, you know, to harass her, send all this, you know, maybe not good information to everybody so that she would lose custody. This included distributing information and pictures from when Christina had worked as a sex worker, going by the name Sweet Caroline Warren. John believed she had been involved in trafficking and in drugs, along with prostitution, so he wanted everybody to know about this. John and Zach sent packages to multiple places, including the veterinary where Christina worked, neighbors, places they often went to. Bradley even got one, and inside the packages were printouts of ads Christina had placed when she worked as a sex worker. Explicit.
No, man, no. Y'all remember earlier when I was talking about not wanting your daughter to see either the mother or father just because of a personal vendetta? You gotta get them how petty that is. Man, he gone to another level of pettiness with this ish right here. This dude, man. And one thing that he got me with when he was like, I think that the A mama is touching her or doing whatever. You know what I'm saying? But he said, I don't have proof, but I think. I'm like, dude, you ain't got no proof, so why do you think this? And on top of that, when A tell you herself if mama was touching me or whatever, or her boyfriend or whatever, like this dude just conjuring up some ish in his brain, y'all, to have a reason to do this crazy ish like he doing right now, sending everybody her naked damn pictures, even her job.
Images, all that. The campaign was getting really, really bad. So this was a very contentious custody battle. John Mello did not want his daughter A anywhere near Christina or her fiance. He would describe him as creepy, wealthy. The wealthy Bradley, and Bradley was the one financing Christina during all of these custody battles and her traveling, you know, between Italy and the United States. He was a pretty rich guy. John had come to believe, fear, that Christina and Bradley might be abusing A, like parents' worst nightmare type stuff, and he would confide this, you know, in Zach Hughes. Zach caught in the middle, a friendship that began over a piano, turned into a war alongside his friend, them exchanging thousands of messages. It was all against a person Zach didn't even know, never met her, was taking John at his word. Was John tricking Zach into helping him, into doing all of this conspiracies and harassment, tricking this, you know, naive young man? Because, I mean, saying somebody's abusing a kid is kind of like the worst possible thing you can ever say about somebody. So it'd be easy to get help from a young fella like Zach Hughes, especially as John, he already had this long history of harassment, of, you know, filing, of blackmailing, you know, sending emails, like all this kind of stuff over minor things like not getting a job, and he tried to ruin that recording studio fella. Was this all in John's head? Or he was putting it into Zach Hughes's head? Or was there more to it than that? Was what John's saying, was it real?
Oh, I said that earlier, man, but I was really not thinking we may be going that way. What if, y'all? What if it is real and John the one telling the truth? That'll be a crazy spin to this story, and it'll just change my whole outlook. But we ain't got there yet. Let's keep going.
As I said, one of the first people interviewed after Christina's brutally murdered body was found was her fiancé, Bradley Post, the man who found her. He was questioned right after the murder, and then as part of a search warrant on October 19th, 6 days later, his phone was seized. All a perfectly normal part of a murder investigation. Maybe his texts, calls, emails, whatever, might give them an indication of what had led to this, as forensics continued in the background. However, what they found on Bradley's phone was highly disturbing. They found volumes of child CP. They found a lot of CP on his phone. So that's horrifying. But the thing was, some of the materials, they featured A and Christina. Holy shit, John Mello was right. I mean, he seems like an ass, but he was right. It seemed like, from what they found, that both Bradley and Christina were abusing the child.
Plot fucking twist, Bean Team. That shit got tears coming to my eyes. What the hell? I apologize, John. Like Mike said, man, you do come off as an asshole, but it seemed like you was on to freaking something. I take everything back I said about you, because there is no way that Bradley can explain them damn pictures. What the fuck? Oh my God, I didn't expect that. Wow. It is always a delight when we get to go back to Mike, man. Let's go, Bean Team.
Bradley Post was charged with 6 counts of sexual exploitation. It was the day after that John Mello returned from Italy and was immediately arrested for the custody issues, though that would later be dismissed.
Judge has dismissed the trial over a custody charge for the man who shared a child with a woman who was brutally killed.
When you do something that for the right reasons and you sort of get punished for it, I think it's hard. It's hard to deal with.
We heard from Mello's daughter, and because she's a minor, we're not using her name, we're not showing her or even using her voice, but we will show you what she said in court. As soon as she took the stand, the state asked what happened in 2022, and she said, quote, "We moved to Italy. It was the best thing that's ever happened to me."
And then the police really honed in on his and Zach's relationship. They found a trove of messages between the two. And on a neighbor's Ring camera, footage showed the killer escaping on a bicycle. That very same bicycle had been spotted in the back of Zach's truck the day before the murder and the day after it. Wow. Authorities then got a warrant to search Zach Hughes' home and accessed his phone, getting more information, text messages, and geolocation of where he had been on October 13th, 2021. Interestingly, his phone had been put in airplane mode at the time of the murder.
29-year-old Zachary David Hughes, a well-known pianist, is accused of stabbing and killing her.
But I think it was more than obvious that he intended to kill her, and he went over there for that reason. And talking about the murder itself, it was very intentional, for sure. We don't know why. We don't know what his motive really was.
Sheriff Hobart Lewis says they identified Hughes as a person of interest early on, but according to the sheriff, no clear relationship, if any, between Hughes and Christina.
All of that was enough to get Zach Hughes arrested and charged with Christina Parcells' murder, which he was on November 3rd, 2021. He was charged with murder, possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime, harassment, conspiracy, and burglary, first degree. Forensic experts would later be able to confirm Zach's DNA was found under Christina's fingernails. Didn't need much more than that to be a slam dunk. But lads, it ain't over yet.
God.
After finding proof in court documents of Mello's friendship with Zachary Hughes, the man now charged with killing Christina Parcells, we asked him his thoughts on how that looks.
I can't help their perception. I can only pray and move forward for my child. I can't cater to people. I can't respond to people. You know, I can't do anything but focus all my efforts on the well-being of my child.
Mello says he came back to the States a week after the murder and was arrested on charges from last year when he took their child to Italy against court order.
We went there to finalize our citizenship, and I wanted her to be away from these people, and I wanted her to have a better life.
Later, both Zach and John Mello, who was not charged with Christina's murder, they were both charged instead with harassment and conspiracy. That was related to sending the naked pictures of Christina around and all that, the entire campaign. So you have Christina Parcell murdered, her fiancé Bradley Post in jail on some of the, the worst charges you can kind of ever be on. Her ex, A's father, John Mello, he was out and about, that custody issues that, he was arrested for when he arrived back in the United States, that would later be dismissed. And then you have his best friend, Zach Hughes, charged with Christina Parcell's murder. Then, in February 2022, a lawsuit was filed against both Bradley Post and Christina Parcell, she was dead, her estate. The lawsuit was filed. There was actually two lawsuits filed, one in February 2022 and then another 6 months later. Those two lawsuits were, one lawsuit was filed by one of A's friends. The second lawsuit was filed by A herself. Christina Parcell and Bradley Post were listed as defendants in the suit. The minors were saying they had been victimized and, forced to make CP for them both. So it seemed like, besides finding the materials on Bradley Post's phone, the victims were now suing them. So it seemed like it was real. Later, another report would be filed, this time against Lutina Parcell, with whom Christina and A were living with at the time of the murder. The report alleges that Lutina took photos of the minor when she was getting out of the shower. That case would be closed though, as there was not enough evidence to obtain warrants. Seriously though, it just does get darker and darker, and it seems like it's almost like to a point that John Mello and Zach Hughes, they sort of seem like almost the good guys. And now, again, these are all allegations against Christina, Lutina, and Bradley. None of it's proven. Innocent until proven guilty and all that, but I mean, come on.
Like, come on, man. You're innocent until proven guilty, but just the thing that just killed it, Bean Team, the fact that it's literally pictures that were found on Bradley's phone of A and the mama in inappropriate ways. You know what I'm saying? So now when A and her friend come and say that, yeah, this is what was happening, I'm inclined to freaking believe them. And like Mike said, you almost can look at John and the other dude, Zach. You can look at them like they the good guys in the story, but they did murder her. Now, I ain't gonna get all up into that now. Maybe I'll talk about it at the end of the video, how I really feel about that part. But in a way, you can look at them as like some type of vigilantes that taking justice into their own hands. Like I said at the very beginning of this video, man. This is a crazy one. So many layers, y'all. So many different moving parts.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This case is about the murder of Christina Parcell. And the state intends to prove that Zachary Hughes did in fact murder Christina Parcell. And you have a number of charges that you're going to be...
Zachary Hughes' trial began February 10th, 2025 for the murder of Christina Parcell. He pleaded not guilty to the murder, which is interesting when they had, his phone, his bike, his DNA of all things. But just because he was pleading not guilty doesn't mean he was saying he didn't do it. At trial, the prosecution filed that any references to CP, which seems to kind of be, the main murder motive for the murder, would be excluded. All right, so you can't talk about them at the trial for Zachary Hughes. Which, well, I guess the prosecution felt that if you were allowed to talk about it, maybe people wouldn't look so negatively at Zach Hughes. Or, they thought that the defense might then try and point the finger at Bradley Post, saying, oh, he was a predator, he was a pedophile, he, killed her. to try and get away with it. The defense, of course, objected, writing that AM had been abused, by Christina and her fiancé Bradley for many, many years. John Mello had expressed concerns about this to the police. They were not followed up on. Her guardian ad litem, who appointed, by the courts during custody issues to represent the child, her guardian ad litem had expressed concerns about Bradley Post to the police. They were not followed up on. Even Zachary Hughes had made a report to the Department DSS, the Department of Social Services. Maybe check them out, not followed up on. So there had been reports before the murder about maybe there's something going on here.
She's a really special kid. She was definitely mature beyond her years, like I talked about. She could hold a conversation with adults. She looked you in the eye. John had been telling me for weeks, Zach, Christina's killing my little girl. Like, I can see the spark dying in her eyes. And again, when I first heard that, I thought, aren't you being a little dramatic? Like, I hadn't seen her, but it just seemed a bit much. When I saw her in these visits, I didn't feel that way anymore. She was not the same little girl that I had known in Greenville when I first met them. She had put on a great deal of weight, probably about 20 pounds, which is roughly a quarter of her body weight. For an 8-year-old girl, that's a lot in a short period of time, but it was much more than that. It was her demeanor. Her spirit was just, she was morose, she was depressed. Like that spunky, precocious, lively little girl that I had met was just not present there.
If all of this is true, as horrifying as the murder was, well, maybe you can kind of see why it was done. At least that's what the defense was trying to say. Right, let me read you out a little quote. During these custody battles, Parcell developed a romantic relationship with a man named Brad Post, who was old enough to be Parcell's father, and who was, or at least perceived to be, very wealthy. Parcell and Post ultimately got engaged. Post and Parcell's relationship greatly concerned Mello. Parcell's prior life as a prostitute and a drug distributor, coupled with Post's wealth and creepiness, prompted Mello to wonder if AM was safe when she was with Parcell and Post. She was not. Post and Parcell sexually abused and victimized AM and another young girl, and Mello reported it. With AM's father stranded in Italy and subject to arrest in a pending warrant if he returned, a charge that was later dismissed at trial, with the GCSO, that's the Greenville County Sheriff's Office, failing to act on child abuse allegations about which they were made aware of years earlier, with the guardian ad litem unfortunately being unable to uncover the abuse, and with the DSS failing to act after Zach reported abuse. Zach knew he was the only one who could save AM from continuing to be sexually abused by her own mother, Parcell, and her boyfriend, Post. He acted to save AM. He did save AM.
Boy, that's a hell of a quote, y'all. And I almost can pretty much say I feel where they coming from with everything they said in that. Like the way they was justifying it and talking about that we went to y'all multiple times and filed reports and y'all didn't look into this ish and this and that and that and that. I kind of feel them being team. I ain't gonna lie.
Did you conclude that you had to rescue and there was no other way?
Yes, I did.
The judge ultimately ruled the allegations against Christina and Bradley Post were inadmissible. They could not be mentioned.
Given the extremely grave nature of John's concerns for his daughter, especially while she was in the custody of her mother, Christina Parcell, and potentially being exposed to her mother's boyfriend, Brad Post, who John believed was a pedophile and is a pedophile.
Objection. Sustained. I instruct you to totally disregard the last comments made by this defendant.
I ain't gonna lie, man. That little clause in this whole trial that's going on is some BS to me. Just the fact that they can't bring up the fact of why they really freaking murdered her. You know what I'm saying, man? Like they can't bring up nothing about the child abuse part, the CP part of Bradley, and I can't even remember the lady name right now, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Like, what? That's the most important part of this case.
The trial would last 10 days, and even though he pleaded guilty, Zachary would fully admit to murdering Christina that morning. He would testify, saying that John had offered him $5,000 to kill Christina. This was later increased to $10,000. Zach declined the offer. From his testimony, it seems he killed as he did fear for A's safety. He filed reports, even posing as a neighbor once, saying he witnessed abuse. Saying that the morning he went to kill Christina, he didn't, do it out of anger, he did it out of pity. That morning, October 13th, 2021, a couple weeks before Halloween, he arrived to the neighborhood few hours early. He had been in touch with John Mello about people's schedules. Maybe they'd be here at this time, maybe they wouldn't be at that time. So Zach Hughes, he waited until Brad, he was at work. A, she had gone to school. Lutina, who lived there, it was her house. She was at work. Christina wasn't at work that morning because she had a job interview. So he goes up to the house with a bundle of roses. The plan was to knock on the door and say, delivery for Lutina Parcell. These are her flowers. Then when Christina opened the door, confirmed she was alone, Lutina's not here, he then pulled out a gun and forced Christina back into the house. He then clattered her across the head. Christina hit the deck. But then Zach hesitated. He'd never killed somebody before. Christina, she jumped at him, fighting for her life, fighting him off. Zach then pulled out a knife, stabbed her over 30 times. Stabbed her till she was not moving anymore. The roses were not ritualistic. That was just roses from dead party getting thrown around the place during the fight. He had moved her body around after stabbing her to death, but he then left.
Did you take Christina Parcell's life on October the 13th?
Yes, because I believed it was absolutely necessary to save her. And I was right.
Objection, Your Honor. Sustained.
I had a great life. I had everything. I made money doing what I loved. I was going to be going to the South Pacific to play concerts for rich people on cruise ships. But how could I go and enjoy that and know that I was leaving a kid to her fate, a kid who thought that I was her friend? I would never have been able to look at myself in the mirror again if I had done that. I knew from that moment on I'd be safe. Would be safe from the sexual abuse that her mother was perpetrating on her. And there is proof to that the state is hiding from you.
Your Honor, instruct him to be quiet.
Man, talk your talk, bro. Tell the truth, man. You heard them. Instruction, be quiet. See, they don't want you to talk about none of the important stuff in the story of really why he did it. Pissing me off.
Ultimately, at the end of the trial, Zach Hughes was found guilty of the murder of Christina Parcell.
As to the charge of murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. As to the charge of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
On February 20th, 2025, he was sentenced to life in prison. But the story ain't over yet, again, because as a result of Zach Hughes' testimony, that John offered to pay him to murder Christina Parcell, remember $5,000 and then $10,000. Well, now John Mello was arrested the very same day. Literally, as soon as those words came out of Zach Hughes' mouth in court, the police were like, okay, well, now we can arrest John Mello.
The Canebrake trial is now over, but there's lingering questions regarding John Mello, his daughter, and Bradley Post.
Well, I have his testimony, so I already have Zach Hughes. He has already stated under oath certain things that Mr. Mello did in relation to the murder of Christina Parcell.
During his testimony, Hughes says Mello twice offered him money to kill Parcell. Deputies say they arrested Mello based on his testimony and other evidence.
He has since been charged with accessory before the fact to a felony and solicitation to commit a felony. AM, who had been with John Mello until now, has been put into emergency protective care. And there you have it. That is Wow. Yeah, that's the end of this video, but not the end of that chapter. See what I did there? So John Mello, will he go on trial? Will he just cop a plea for being involved in his ex's murder? It's a story that just like, you know, everything kind of flips on its head. There's a lot of very surprising things in this case, a lot of very awful allegations against quite a number of people, whether they actually happened or were just allegations. Christina, you know, against her, was she, how involved in the alleged abuse was she? Was she forced into it? You know, there's a lot of things, unanswered questions in this story, but it just gives you like a very icky feeling about everybody in this tale. And then you have John Mello and Zach Hughes, who, you know, in cahoots committed a horrifying act, a horrifying and gruesome murder, but at the same time, you can kind of see, well, I mean, if that was your kid, I don't know. It's just a very icky, disturbing case all around. So I guess this video just sort of ends. All right. Thank you so much for watching, you. It really means a lot to me that you're here watching this whole video. I hope you found it as interesting, horrifying, disturbing, but ideally interesting, as I did when I was researching it. The next video will be up every Tuesday. But if you're looking for some more of that chapter, you can check out the merch. Give it a go, please, if you'd like to, down below. I'm really proud of the merch, and the hoodies are extremely comfortable. I'm not just saying that, they actually genuinely are. No strings, which I also made sure they didn't have, because it's annoying. You can also check out the That Chapter podcast, which has a brand new episode out every single Monday morning, all completely podcast exclusive stories, different to the stories I tell here on the channel. So check out the That Chapter podcast. It's got like 18,000 reviews, 5-star something. I don't know. It tells me it's good. And you can also check out the That Chapter Patreon, where for $2 a month you get early access ad-free every single video. There's also a playlist of Patreon-only videos right there too. So check it out. But you know what? Until the next old video, please take care of each other. Please take care of yourselves. Because I love you. Mike out.
Another That Chapter Wednesday Bean Team. And man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. This one right here, this was a sticky situation. Like, this was a messy situation. Like, this was all of the above, y'all. And at the end of the day, man, I really just feel like more than anything, since Zach got charged with murder, right, and he got found guilty, right, and now he got to do life in prison, right, then John got to get the same shit, y'all. Long story short, story long, because he involved in it too. And I'm not even excusing them for killing Christina, but if those allegations are true, at the same time, I can't blame them. I'll just leave it at that. You know what I'm saying, man? I'll just try to stay in the middle of the road with that. Rest in peace, Christina. I'll say that too. And like Mike said, you never know if Bradley was the one who was controlling her and making her do that stuff with her daughter. Even though that's a hard thing to say, I don't freaking know, big team. This one could go so many ways, and there's a lot of answers that we will never get. We will never get, man. We will never truly know. But even if you just look at from what the daughter's saying, yes, this was happening. Her friend saying that's what was happening. Louise, or whoever the lady they was staying with, said she thought some crazy ish was going on. They got pictures on their phone, so it really is pointing towards that way. Which, and like I said, man, at least for the father, John, I feel like, this shit crazy if I say this, man, but I'm just keeping it real. I feel like if anybody should have killed Christina over this ish, it should have been John doing it himself. It's kind of different when you involve Zach, because Zach, he didn't even know them or nothing. Like, he was just a friend, and it's so crazy how he just threw his life away. Dude was successful as elf, getting money, playing the freaking piano, and he was having hard times in his life, but the freaking piano was taking his career to a whole nother level. But I feel like that was a little more tricky and maybe not be as justified, other than the father actually doing it. But at the same time, it still is murder. So, man, BT, this is a hard one, y'all. This is one of those ones where, just like Mike just left us, ain't got nothing else to say. I ain't got nothing else to say to Big T. I'm just gonna have to leave it at that. And I digress. I'm gonna go and let y'all go too, man. And before y'all leave, just please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that if you ain't did that yet. And remember this. Love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.